Hi everybody. Welcome to Module 5, Unit 5, where we'll be talking about practicing for effective delivery. It's been great to see so many of you in my office hours, particularly those of you bringing your personal statements. I'm happy to look at all kinds of materials, however, including cover letters. So please come by, whether in person or virtually in my Google Hangouts time. Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon. Hope to see you. I hope that you're finding this useful class. As we move into the part about public speaking, I know that many of you might have anxieties about public speaking, so I'm going to bring up some words from a former student. This student writes, many of the students who presented their speeches that day, so their Ignite style speeches in the final showcase, seem to possess a natural gift in public speaking. I personally needed a lot of practice and memorization. What's notable about what this student says, though, is that she found herself ending up being much more successful than she thought she would be, even though she had a lot of initial anxiety. She writes, I even used it as an example during a job interview to prove not just public speaking skills, but my determination to succeed, explaining how every sentence was designed perfectly to go with each slide. And this is a student who wrote about an elephant refuge in Thailand where she had had a really interesting learning abroad experience. So certainly a memorable Ignite style speech. In this module, and in the module before, we look at the words of Benjamin Bratton about the genre of the fast format speech, and we'll consider his advice for how to be more effective public speakers. In the lecture videos, we'll be looking at the idea of telos. Telos is a Greek word which means you're going to be focusing on the end, purpose, or goal in communication rather than the means. So telos, or purpose, is a term that we're going to add to our vocabulary of Greek rhetorical terms. So that's ethos, logos, pathos, kairos, and now telos, in order to have a vocabulary for talking about our rhetorical expressions. So in thinking about purpose, in practicing for effective delivery, you're going to notice that the course is going to undergo a bit of a shift at this point. So we're moving from the personal statement assignment, where you knew the purpose, if the purpose is getting into graduate or professional school or having a grant or scholarship funded, but you might not know the audience initially. So you have to do research on the audience. You need to find out about the institution that you'd be applying to. You need to be able to learn about your imagined readers, and you need to understand to whom you might be speaking. In the case of the Ignite style speech, you know who you'll be speaking to. You'll be speaking to your fellow students in your section. These are people that you've gotten to know a bit through the synchronous discussions, and hopefully you'll find out that it's a supportive audience that wants to give you a lot of facilitative feedback. So in this case, you'll know the audience, but maybe you won't initially know the purpose. So I want to talk to you today about strategies that you can use in this module for improving your work in purpose-driven communication, particularly in the Ignite style speech format. So people here do a lot of amazing things at UCSD. Students do research on everything from how to find new treatments for cancer to how to build sustainable housing, or in this case, classroom space in the developing world. So this is a kindergarten in Fiji that was built by a student who was on a TIES internship, and oh, look how quickly that changed. One of the things to be aware of is that those slides are going to move really rapidly. So you really will need to rehearse. One of the things to think about, though, is you can have a very informative presentation, but you also want to figure out how to formulate a call to action. And that can be tricky if you've chosen a how-to format for your Ignite style speech. The how-to format can be a very popular form of informative speaking, but it can be trickier to figure out what the call to action is. So for example, we've had really memorable Ignite style speeches in public rhetoric and practical communication on topics like how to fight zombies in the case of the zombie apocalypse, or how to land a plane if you're suddenly finding yourself in the cockpit because of an emergency, or how to make funfetti cupcakes, or how to write a hit song. So some of these how-to format Ignite style speeches are certainly crowd pleasers, but the challenge is, how do you make that purpose compelling? So for example, in the How to Land a Plane Ignite style speech, the speaker also encouraged his audience to learn more about aviation. So by getting them to be active participants in aviation rather than passive participants, just as mere flyers, imagining what it would be like to be in the cockpit, he did actually have a call to action. And there was even a call to action in the Funfetti Ignite style speech, in that the student was really encouraging the audience to get away from traditional dorm food and take a little more pleasure in eating as a social activity, and an activity that can actually involve learning as well. Sometimes the call for action will be extremely dramatic, as in the case of this Ignite style speech, where the speaker was concerned about public safety and wanted to encourage people to not just be bystanders to violent actions. And in fact, the visuals underscore this message by showing a memorial poster for someone who was beaten to death during an altercation on the street. You might have other kinds of calls to action that are also powerful in an Ignite style speech. This student looked at an arson case in which someone was actually executed. She argued that this prosecution and judgment was not justified based on the evidence, and that detectives were relying on hunches overly much rather than material that would be potentially exculpatory to the accused. But there can be other kinds of purposes, other kinds of calls to action that might be meaningful in the context of your Ignite style speech. So for example, a student did an Ignite style speech about lion dancing, in which he argued that more people should get involved in this healthy and potentially lucrative activity, and that it shouldn't just be seen as the purview of members of a particularly narrow cultural group, but rather that a wide variety of people could benefit from being part of the lion dancing experience. And we also had a student who did an interesting Ignite style speech that had to do with shopping at thrift stores, where she was arguing that the call to action about shopping at thrift stores could not only be a way to promote cheaper and funkier fashion, but also fashion that was more sustainable because there was less waste in the fashion industry and less garments going into landfills. And this unit will be a transition unit also to the next unit, where we'll be talking about visual literacy and graphic design. And so you'll start wanting to think about the design of your slides and also how you choose effective images, because it's really important to make your Ignite style speech visually distinctive as well as verbally distinctive. And you want to choose images that aren't just stock photos, but rather are carefully composed and curated materials that tell your audience what's important visually as well. So I hope you enjoy the materials in this week. I look forward to seeing you in my office hours, And please feel free to email me at any time, lizlosh@ucsd.edu. So that's LIZLOSH @ucsd.edu. And I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.